Good evening and a very warm welcome to everyone. I, Pratik Toshniwal, part of MI Capital, would want to welcome all of you to our session on taxation of natural persons. We're going to try and simplify this topic for a lot of individuals who are probably drawing salaries, wages, business income in this part of the region. We all know that UAE has transformed from a zero tax jurisdiction to a low tax jurisdiction. And this change has been very important for it to match the OECD's and the jurisdictions across the globe. UAE now stands in a very important journey to the change of taxation, and it only does not apply to corporates, but it also applies to individuals who are doing businesses in this part of the region. That is why the name is Taxation on Businesses and Corporations, and it's not corporate tax. So very important thing to note is even individuals who are doing businesses in this part of the world would be taxed. And in detail, it will be covered by my colleague Karishma. What I would also want to entertain and encourage during this session is, we have kept a lot of interesting poll questions for everyone. However, if you have any further questions, feel free to use the chat box and the Q&A segment, and we'll be happy to answer the question. So Karishma, I would want to introduce the team. So if you can take to the next slide. This is our team who has been taking constant effort since April 2022, since the public documentation, consultant documentation was announced. And we've been doing a lot of webinars, seminars to ease out the tax law and to simplify it for the larger aspect of corporates as well as individuals in this part of the region. UAE happens to bring a lot of change when it comes to it stands very unique because this region does not have any personal income tax specifically on investments, and that is where a lot of criticalities will be covered during this presentation. We have also as a team made an effort to make a lot of videos, a simple topic covering a lot of videos throughout the process. And here are the YouTube channel links, which all of you can access. And feel free to reach out to us if there is any questions. We have also done series of events, and I think 10, 15, 20 events till now on webinars and topics, which is very important. As well as we have conducted staff trainings for a lot of companies, which helped them get ready for the taxation. What we also did was made sure that we write opinion articles, and we've been very welcomed by Khalid Times, who've been regularly covering our opinion articles on the subject. So before going into a lot of details about who is going to be taxed, what is the aspect of natural person, and what is the critical aspect that we all need to understand, I would leave this floor open to Karishma, my colleague, to capture in few of the important topics of natural person, talking about the definition, the coverage, who will be taxed, who will not be taxed, what will be a part of the turnover. And during that process, in between, we'll also play a live poll question for the audience so that it becomes very interactive. So over to you, Karishma, and I hope that you all have a great session.
Thank you, sir. So I would first begin with, as Pratik sir mentioned, that it is about a natural person. So who would be considered as a natural person when it comes to the UAE taxation? So any living human who has been resident in the UAE or even outside the UAE will be considered as a natural person, and he or she may get taxed under this UAE corporate tax. Also, the minors or other person via their legal representative may be considered as a natural person under the tax regime. So this is a general definition for who would be considered as a natural person. Now coming to a very important aspect, like when the natural person would be taxed in the UAE. So if a natural person is residing in the UAE, and he or she has been conducting a business or business activities in the UAE, then he will be considered as a resident and will be treated as a taxable person in the UAE. Similarly, if the person has been residing outside UAE and any country outside the UAE, if we have a double taxation agreement that has been invoked for that country, then that person will be treated as a non-resident if the double taxation agreement has been mentioning it. If the double taxation agreement has not been invoked with any country with whom the person has been resident, then he will be considered as resident in UAE and not resident of that other country. So when the person has been residing outside the UAE, the important aspect which comes into picture is about the double taxation agreement. So what are the agreements that has been entered with the foreign country that needs to be understood, and based on that the residency of the person would be determined. Now, as I said, that there are certain key considerations that needs to be considered when we have to consider that a person is a resident and he will be taxed in the UAE. So very important consideration is about that the person needs to conduct a business or business activity in the UAE. Now, just not that, if he has been conducting business or business activities, but the turnover is very minimal, then it's not required to comply with the corporate tax regulations. But his turnover has exceeding 1 million in a Gregorian calendar year, that is for Jan to December calendar year, for the Jan to December financial year, then he will be considered as taxable person in the UAE. The important consideration with respect to natural persons is that his wages, his personal investment income, or his real estate investment income would not be considered as a taxable income while determining his residency into the UAE. So if you are a salaried person, or if you're earning any personal investment income from any shares, or if you're having any rental income, such income derived will not be considered as your taxable income in the UAE. Now, just to help understand this with an example, suppose Mr. A has been coming into the UAE and he sets up a jewelry workshop in the UAE and has been earning 1.7 million from that jewelry workshop. So as he has been conducting a business or business activity, that is, he has set up a shop in UAE and has been earning from that jewelry shop, he will be considered as a resident. On top of that, he has been earning more than 1 million, as he is earning 1.7 million. He will be considered as a taxable person, as a resident taxable person in the UAE, and need to comply with the corporate tax regulations. Now, what are the compliances that will be covered in the later part? The notable point in this case is if Mr. A has been earning a revenue of 1.7 million, which is less than 3 million. Now there is something called as a small business relief, which can be opted by Mr. A as his revenue is less than 3 million. Now what is that option for small business relief will be covered in the latter this slide, but just to give you a gist that in this case, as he has been earning more than 1 million, he will be considered as a taxable person in the UAE. Now, when I say a taxable income of a natural person, so what all needs to be considered as a taxable income for a natural person? Very first, that should be a state-sourced income. Now, what do we mean by state-sourced income is if any person has been deriving income from a UAE resident, or even from a UAE permanent establishment of a non-resident, and has been earning from business or business activities in the UAE, such income would be defined as a state-sourced income, and it will be taxable in the hands of a natural person. I'll go on the next slide where we'll explain about what can be considered as state-sourced income, some of the example which has been defined by the law itself. Secondly comes the business income. Now, when I mean a business income, that is business activities has been conducted in the UAE, only that income will be considered as the business income. And lastly, the turnover, if it is exceeding 1 million, then it will be considered as a taxable income. Notably, while calculating the turnover, or while calculating the business income for a natural person, the wages earned, the personal investment income earned, or the real estate investment income earned has to be excluded while calculating the taxable income. Now, coming to the example of like what can be considered as a state sourced income, these are some of the this is just an examples which has been given in the law that what can be considered as a state sourced income, which states that if you have been deriving from goods or services that are utilized in the UAE, from the contracts which are benefited in the UAE, from the property or any intellectual property in the UAE, even from disposal of shares of a resident person, then such income will be treated as your state sourced income. Other than that, if you're having any interest, insurance, or reinsurance from the asset that are being held in the UAE from a resident person, then it will be considered as your state sourced income. As I mentioned, that the person needs to have a business or business activity in the UAE. Now, what do we mean by business activity or business income in the UAE? If the business income is derived from the UAE or outside the UAE, and it so far relates only to the business activity that are conducted in the UAE, it will be treated as business or business activity. Now, what do we mean where a business activity is conducted in the UAE means if a person who is contributed or managed or working or are the residents of the UAE, then it will be treated as business activities conducted in the UAE. Secondly, if there is any business development or contracting which has been conducted through UAE, similar way that will also be considered as a business activities in the UAE. And lastly, if the assets that are being used are contributed towards the UAE, then also it will be treated as business activity in the UAE. Now, just to give another example, suppose Mr. A has been providing consultancy services and he earns 1.2 million from those consultancy services. In that case, the total turnover of Mr. A is say 1.2 million, but the net profit that is generated out of such consultancy services is 900,000. Then in this case, as he is conducting a business activity, as consultancy services do not come into the real estate income, it doesn't come under your personal investment income, it will be treated as a business activity, and hence it will be treated as a taxable person. Secondly, his turnover is 1.2 million, which is again exceeding 1 million, hence it will be treated as a taxable income for that purpose. Now his net profit is 900,000. Now while calculating the taxable income, the tax slabs, which is like up to 375,000 of your net profits, 0% tax will be liable. About 375,000, you will be liable to pay 9% of the taxation. Similar would apply. In this case, up to 375,000 zero, and for balance 525,000, 9% of the corporate tax would be levied. Now coming to while calculation of the turnover, whenever a natural person has been deriving his taxable income, what are all things that he needs to calculate and come into the taxable income is his calculation of turnover. So while calculating the turnover, the person should have a gross income from business or business activities that has been conducted during the calendar year. Apart from that, if a person has deriving any income from his sole proprietorship and also as a partner from an unincorporated firm, that will also be treated as his turnover, and that needs to be calculated while calculating his taxable income. All the books has to be prepared on accrual basis, and if cash basis has been opted for the client, like say if the natural person has been earning less than 3 million, then he has an option to opt for the cash basis of accounting. In this income, of course, as mentioned earlier, the wages, the personal investment income, and the real estate income would not be calculated and would not form part of the turnover. Now, before moving further, I'll take this last example, and after this, we'll move to some interesting poll questions, which will be led by Pratik sir. In this case, if a natural person has been providing services outside UAE and has been earning 950,000 from that services, but he has been visiting UAE as well frequently and has been earning 100,000 from the services which he has provided in the UAE. Now, he being an architect, he's providing all the services outside UAE, but only frequently he comes to UAE and has been earning only 100,000. Now, while calculating the turnover, as we mentioned earlier, that while calculating the turnover, what all needs to be considered. Now, in country A, he has earned 950,000. It's not in UAE, it's in some else country. And in UAE, he has earned only 100,000. So while calculating the turnover, the only income which he has earned in the UAE will be calculated. And in this case, which is less than 1 billion, as it is only 100,000, this income would not be treated. He would not be subject to corporate tax as it is below the threshold that is of 1 million. So I hope this has given you some idea about how the taxability would be calculated for a natural person, what needs to be included in his turnover while calculating the taxable income. We'll move to further element. Before that, I would like to have some poll questions.
Sure. Thank you so much, Karishma.
Just a minute.
But one thing is for sure, any natural person doing business in this country will be taxable. So Karishma, there is a poll, but it is only yes and no. There is no question to it that I can see.
Now I think
Yeah,
it should be
I can
visible
see the
now.
question. Yes. So for everyone, yeah, there is a question, and I will come to that question. For everyone, there is this poll that will have come to your screen. Who is considered a natural person under corporate tax law? Any living human being or only UAE residents? Last 5 seconds for everyone to answer this. Perfect. So I hope most of you would have got this right. Can we go to the results, Karishma? Perfect. So I think I can't see the results, Karishma, but I'm sure you can use the chat box for also writing the answers. 92% of you have said that it is. Yeah, I think people are still replying. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so 90% of you are right. It is any living human being. So that is definitely the right answer. Karishma, can we go to the next poll question?
Yes, sir. Just a minute.
There's an interesting question that says, how can a natural person conduct a business without a trade license, which would essentially mean that it is a corporate? So, not exactly. Yeah, sorry, GK Ravi Saab, we'll send the poll questions again. So Tarun, I will answer this. A lot of natural person are doing business on either freelance visa or work permit visas, which essentially do not require a trade license as such. So, and even if there is a trade license, then it can also be a sole proprietor or a proprietor business trade license. So it essentially does not only mean to be a corporate, and therefore there are other ways where natural person can get taxable even after conducting a business without trade license. But however, like Karishma, my colleague mentioned, if we if your turnover is less than 3 million, it is recommended that we open a corporate and take that small business relief so that it can help you. So there's a live poll question.
I think so. The poll questions are directly going to the individual. There's some error due to which I cannot launch
No
it on the
problem.
screen.
So what we can do is if we can open the Excel file or if we can direct ask the questions, that also works. Not a problem at all. Feel free to ask the questions and we'll get the answers.
So we continue with our poll questions, or shall I move further and then we take
No, we will.
at
We
the
will
end?
continue with the presentation right now, and then probably
Okay.
we'll take the poll question.
So moving further, while calculating the taxable income, what are the things that need to be excluded from the calculation of taxable income? Very first comes the wages. Now, wages can be anything that is from the benefit or compensation or even in kind from any employer that a person has been receiving. It can be any fees or other similar payments that has been received from a joint stock company or in any other capacity as a director. Any such income that is being derived that needs to be excluded while calculating the taxable income. Secondly, if there is the personal investment income or a real estate investment income like rental income or even income from shares or capital gains, that need to be excluded while calculating your taxable income. Now, this is one another interesting question where we can say that what can be done to what, like, when the person's taxable income needs to be considered. Now, if there's a one person, he observes that the price of an artwork has been increasing tremendously. He just as an hobby buys all those artworks and he has just set up a small office at his home. When he sees that the price have been increasing continuously, he has been selling this artwork overseas and he has derived a revenue of 5 million from this from all this sell of artwork. Now this income is just a kind of hedging that he has done, but it still will be considered as business and business activities, and thus as it is increasing 1 million, it will be considered as his turnover and that will be subjected to tax. So even in this format, you can understand that even if a person has been not regularly doing this business, but he has just one time set up an office, he has bought the artwork and has been selling it overseas and earning profits out of it by sitting in the UAE, this can be considered as a business or business activity in the UAE. Another important example where a person has been earning from his wages and salaries and also from a business income, what will be the taxability in such case? In this case, like if a person has been providing services to company A and he has been earning a salary along with bonus of 450,000, and just as an hobby he's selling cupcakes and earning 900,000. Now, while calculating his turnover, the salaries and wages income or the bonus that he has earned, that is of 450,000, would not be considered in his turnover, as I explained earlier, and only the business income, that is 900,000, will be considered as his taxable income. Now, as this income is less than 1 million, he is not required to get any registration and neither liable to pay any taxes in the UAE. The corporate tax rate, as we all know, that now up to 375,000 of your annual taxable income will be taxed at 0%, and above 375,000 it will be taxed at 9%. With respect to qualifying free zone person, it will be 0% for the qualifying income they derive, and the rest of the income would be taxable at 9%. As explained earlier as well, that there is a small business relief which natural persons can also opt for if their revenue is less than 3 million. If the revenue of a natural person is more than 1 million, then he is by default liable to register and pay taxes. But if it is less than 3 million, then he can opt for the small business relief, and the option to opt for small business relief is up to 2026. So if you're a small business is not earning more than 3 million, then you can also opt for the small business relief which has been given by the FTA. Now, while calculating the taxable income, there are certain deductible expenses and non-deductible expenses which the natural person has to consider while deriving at its taxable income. So any income which he has been incurring for his business nature would straight away treated as a deductible expenses. What would not be deductible is the expenses which he has been not incurring for business or which is derived from exempt income or any losses. Now, the donations, fines, penalties, any taxes that you have paid, all those would also not be allowed. And also, if you're having any entertainment expenditure, then only 50% of those expenditure would be allowed. Now, the notable point for the sole proprietor or for the natural person who has been conducting the business through a sole proprietorship business is with respect to the salaries or wages that they are withdrawing. This salary or wages that a sole proprietor would be withdrawing from his own business, even though it would be at arm's length principle, would not be allowed as a deductible expenditure while calculating the taxable income. So if you say that if you are a sole proprietor and have been withdrawing a salary for yourself, say up to 300, you have a revenues generated of 900,000, and you say that now I would withdraw 300,000, which due to which you are not liable to pay any taxes. But that 300,000 that you have been withdrawing as your salary or as your wages in whatsoever name, that would not be allowed as a deductible expenditure and will be added back to your to get to your taxable income. Now, another important aspect with respect to natural person comes what will be treated as a related parties. Now, as we all know that transfer pricing has come into the picture, and with your related parties or connected persons, whatsoever transaction you're having, that needs to be at arm's length principle. Similarly, with natural persons, if a natural person is having relation with another natural person up to fourth kinship, that will be treated as a related person. If with another juridical person, the relationship, it needs to be identified with respect to two bases. First is based on the ownership, and second would be the based on control. If you are in partner in an unincorporated partnership, or if you are a trustee, founder or settler, or a beneficiary for any trusts or foundation, then also you will be treated as a related party if you're having any transactions with those trusts or foundations. And lastly, the connected persons, if you are having any juridical person with whom you are having the transactions, they would also be treated as the connected persons. And whatsoever transactions you are having with any other natural person or all the defined categories of industry, then those transactions should be at arm's length principle and transfer pricing would come into picture. Not just explained over here that what will be considered up to the fourth degree of kinship. In the first stage would be coming your husband, wife, parents, children. In second stage would be the siblings, grandparents or grandchildren. Similarly, up to fourth kinship, all these details or this fourth kinship has been defined by the authorities, like this will be considered as your fourth kinship and your affiliation. Moving on to the last bit, that would be the compliances. Like if you're a natural person, what are all the compliances that you should be mindful of? Very first, you have to get your tax registration. So if your revenue is exceeding or your turnover is exceeding 1 million dirhams, then you have to mandatorily get yourself registered. And if you are liable to pay taxes, that needs to be paid within 9 months from the end of the financial year. In most of the cases, that would be 30th September 2025. If you're opening any new business, then the same number can be used if you're opening under the same name. And if the turnover is not exceeding more than 1 million, the deregistration is not immediately permitted. If unless and until if you're cessing your business, if the business activity has come to closure of liquidating your company, then you need to apply to the authorities and there would be tax deregistration. In case of a death of a taxable person, that would be continued to the estate value will be tax. If any payable would be settled from the estate value. If the estate is not done, it will be recoverable from the heirs of the natural person. While calculating or while deriving the taxable income and while preparing the financial statements, IFRS principle has to be followed, and if the person is not earning more than 3 million, then he can follow the cash basis accounting as well. Other than that, the accrual basis of accounting needs to be followed while preparing your financial statements. Audit is required only when you are having a revenue or having a turnover of more than 50 million. But apart from that, it is always recommended to get your books audited. And the last one is the financial year for all the natural persons who are conducting business through a sole proprietor would be Jan to December. Now, just one last example before we move to other questions is what all will be calculated in the turnover. In this case, we can see that Mr. A has been having multiple business income. Very first, as he has been working as an employee and earning 200,000 from the employee. Secondly, he has been also working on a freelance basis and earning 1.6 million from his freelance activities. And he is also selling cell phones and accessories and earning 2 million from such selling of cell phones. Now, while calculating the turnover, the wages that he has been earning as an employee, that is 200,000, would not be considered. The only income that needs to be considered is the one which he has earned from the freelancing and from selling of the cell phones, which in this case comes to total 3.6 million. Now, there would be certain expenses as well that will be related along with the turnover that he has been incurring. Those expenses he can deduct while coming to the taxable income. In this case, as we can identify that it is 1.8 million. So 1.8 million would be his taxable income, and the tax calculation for this up to 375,000 will be nil, and above that it will be taxable at 9%. So his tax liability in this case would be only 128,250. This he needs to register and then file to the authorities within due. Now, I would like to
Thank you so much,
open with
Karishma.
some. Yeah, thank you,
Yes,
thank
I
you.
yes, I am seeing a lot of interesting questions in the chat box, and I would pick up few before we go to our rather simple, I would say, after your beautiful explanation, the polls. So there is this question on the lottery proceeds. So is the lottery proceeds which can be considered a taxable income? So if you ask us, it is not a business or a business activity as such. This is one of a lottery that you would have won, and unfortunately, there is no clarity as such which covers lottery as a taxable income today. Even if you see state source income, it doesn't cover lottery as such. So it can potentially be exempted and not be a part of your income. However, there is, again, as I say, there is no clarity, but there is something called a state source income from a UAE resident. So if it is from a UAE resident, there is a possibility they may consider, but more likely or not, lottery proceeds will not be a part of a business or business activity, and hence 0% taxability on that. Coming to a question of investments, whether art is an investment or not, art is definitely an investment. But if art is is being done as a business, then that becomes a business, not investment. So, for example, if I am holding an asset, that is fine, but I'm trading in an asset, then that becomes business, right? If I am holding a share and keeping it for long 3, 4, 5 years, it is not business, it is investment. But if I do trading every day, it's not investments, it is business. And hence art, the example that Karishma covered, art was business, he was selling in art, and that is why it'll be a part of the turnover. The next question goes for freelancers who do not have a trade license. So what will be the source of calculating his taxable income? So if you ask us, I'm sure they would be earning through bank accounts. They will have to get registered as a taxpayer, and then, as per whatever financials they draw, they will have to file their returns and take the benefits if there have been expenses that they are eligible to set off. Because it's not a short-term ploy where probably a lot of people can do financial engineering. We say we need to think a long-term perspective. Today you may have a loss, tomorrow you may be profitable. So even carry forward of losses is allowed when it comes to natural person. So a lot of variances will come into picture, but we as consultants will always say, don't do any financial engineering, think of long term and probably work according to that. So even the source of calculating is very simple, either cash or bank, whatever income you're generating will be a part of the taxable income. Uh, then there is a question on what is the return file date. So there is no date as such that has been for registration there is no date, but for return it is 9 months from end of the financial year. That probably in case of natural person will be, because it has to follow a Jan to December, it will be September 2020 2025. That is where the date of taxability or the first return will come into. Then there is a question, which activities under real estate income require license? Does leasing of multiple buildings, villas by natural person require license? So this is a very interesting question, because if you're following a Airbnb route and you are having a business out of it, then it requires a license. Otherwise, if you're holding assets in your personal name and if you have a rental income, that is not business, that's pure investment. So that's how you will have to bifurcate your real estate. If it is purely in your name and the purpose is rental income, it will be treated as investments. But if it is for the purpose of building villas and then renting them out and then doing business out of it, then you will require a brokerage or some sort of commercial license to back it up, and then it becomes business. uh, Shareholders or investors salary can be considered as salary or not. So very interesting, and I think Karishma has covered that briefly. If it is from a sole proprietorship, it will unfortunately will not be a salary, but otherwise if it is from a corporate or from business, then definitely it is a part of salary or wages, and that income will not be part of your turnover, and hence no taxability on that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Karishma. I'm just going with the questions that these people have asked, and it is good that we also learn from these questions and try and help
Sure,
them.
sure.
So there are few questions regarding corporates and company registrations and first taxable period and all. I'm not taking that purposely because the first priority is to cover individuals and the natural persons who may get taxed. But I would try and answer a few of them probably later, because I think a lot of individuals who would want to know the answers to whatever assets they are holding, or whatever business they are doing. So, yeah, my boss having real estate properties in her personal capacity, is the rental income or profit from sale of properties is taxable? So, as I said, if it is purely for a rental income, and even if you sell and derive a capital gain, it is not a business income. It is pure personal investments. They have very clearly clarified this. This will not be part of your, turnover, and hence no corporate tax will be applicable on that. However, if it is in the business of Airbnbs and running the business on day-to-day basis, yes, it will form part of the real estate income. House provided by the company to the director, the rent on the house is deductible or not? This should not be part of the natural person again. On a company level, yes, definitely there is a possibility, but I think individuals have nothing to do with this. Are sportsmen with UAE residents considered to be doing business activity in case they may they have match in it and are subject to corporate tax? I don't think playing sports needs license in UAE. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you don't need a license to be a player, right? You can play cricket. Now it is your profession, right? And if you read technically, if you read the law, businesses covers services as well, right? It is consultancy services is business, right? So a professional business player, right? If he's earning from a UAE country as a whole, his entire income from his profession, unfortunately, I feel, and Karishma, if you can correct me, I feel this will be a part of business income and probably will be a part of taxable income if it is more than 1 million dirhams a year. But if he is just one-off cases playing and get some revenue, probably that will not form a part of this reason. What if salary withdrawal by owner in an LLC company without any employment contract? So definitely, I mean, as I said, or probably we have covered also in our compliances and the part, it is important that we have a contract, because if we do not have the contract, we don't have substantiated document to say that this is correct salary or not correct salary, because in certain cases you may even have to, department may ask you to benchmark as well, right? So it is important that the contracts are in place and the salaries are drawn as per the contract, and not on the whims that we feel that we have done 3 million dirhams of business, let's draw entire 3 million as salary. Unfortunately, it will not sail through. So it has to be backed by an employment contract, and then everything which is genuine will fly off. Is interest on current account balance held by individual shareholder in LLC company treated as taxable income in hands of the shareholders? Will the above interest allowed as deduction for the company? So company bit again, I'm leaving aside, but interest on current account balance again, it's technically part of your business. At the end of the day, it is not an investment in personal capacity, neither it is wages nor it is real estate income. So unfortunately, this will form part of your business income and will be taxable. uh, could you throw some light on corporate tax election for okay. Perfect. So I think, most of the questions on individuals I have definitely covered. Karishma, if you can also go through if I have missed a few. But but on the individual perspective, I would also ask a few questions. Yes, commission income is a business income. So if we feel that commission income is not, again, as I said, it is service or product, it doesn't matter. It has to be a business income. And if the threshold is crossed, then potentially it will be treated as your business income. For that matter, even royalty will be part of this income. It is not an investment through which you are earning royalty. So it will be part of your business income and hence taxable. Uh, then Oh, yeah, I mean, Karishma, thank you so much for replying to the questions also in the chat box. I have a few questions that I would love to run through. Uh, so all the answers can be done in the chat box. The questions that I have, the first question will be natural person. Are they required to include wage income when calculating the turnover? So is I think it is very clear that wage income should not be a part of the turnover. And I'm glad that people are replying that, yes, definitely it is no, that wage income should not be a part of the turnover. And therefore, if you're earning wage plus any freelance income, only freelance income will be taken as a part of the turnover, and then the taxability will be known. The next question is, if a natural person income has income from overseas business activities, are they subject to corporate tax if they are resident person? So very interesting question. A natural person earning overseas income, will that be considered as a part of your business income here? You can reply on the chat box. So yeah, okay, okay. So I have mixed answers, and Karishma can add a lot of value here. A natural person who's a resident person earning foreign income on an overseas income will will be considered as a part of your business income, and therefore it'll be a part of your turnover as well, until and unless it is an investment income or other income. So it is same rule applies for what applies for corporate applies for natural person as well. Global income will be taxable if you're a resident person of UAE, until and unless it is not a personal investment income.
Correct.
Otherwise, any income that will be based out will be taxable. However, yes, you can get foreign tax credit if that is from a tax is already paid in that country. So yeah, I mean, based on DTAA, definitely you will get the benefit. The next question, I think I have already covered because few of you asked about capital gains on sale of property. So definitely, if there is a sale of property, it is investment that got sold off and you're earning capital gains. So no, that will not be a part of your normal turnover limits, and there will not be any taxes. So I think in between, I have covered all the poll questions. I think there are a few poll questions that Karishma, I have also covered, like royalties, right? There is
Correct.
one poll question which is important, probably. Does the corporate tax law provide any relief for taxation paid in other countries to natural person,
Correct.
right? And as I said briefly, I touched upon the double tax treaty. So definitely the same will get benefit. The natural person who's paid tax in the other country will get the tax credit benefit because of the DTAA existing between UAE and that country. Until that extent, the tax will not be, so there will not be any double tax, but otherwise there'll be taxes in this country. So moving on to few more questions that have come in. I think specifically when yeah. So see again, it's a very subjective topic whether that current account investment, and there is an interest on the investment income. So anything based out of investment, whether it is dividends, interest, any other income, capital gain, it will not be subject to business tax. It will not be qualifying as business activity, and hence they will not be a part of the turnover. But if it is due to business that you're doing, say you're selling, cars, and through selling cars you're earning 300,000, and that 300,000 is getting you interest, then that interest is part of your business income. Otherwise, any interest income that you have made purely based on your investment is not part of it. So I hope that I've clarified that question. I have already covered on commission, and then there is some question regarding salary. If the owner takes employment contract from the company and then took salary, in that situation, this salary can be deductible expenses. So for company, again, I'm leaving this, but in your hands, this will not be part of the business income, and it will not be taxable. So I'm getting dividends from my company where I'm 100% shareholders. Is that taxable in my personal capacity? So again, I'm getting dividends from my company. Dividends received by resident person is not taxable generally, right? It is a part of your investment income. However, if it is, I hope that this is the simple question. But if it is a sole proprietorship, then a lot of other things will have to be checked in. And otherwise, it is purely dividends received will not be taxable for sure. So which expenses are not allowed to be deducted from business income? So for a natural person, any deduction that you get will be only purely for business purpose. For example, you're doing some business, you're also doing, you have covered it, right? Karishma, it is there, the list. Perfect.
The list
So
is there. That's why I
non-deductible,
just put it
yeah. So
again.
I'll give a very glaring example before going into that an individual driving on the road, because UAE is known for its fines, right? I mean, we pay a lot of fines while driving, late penalties because we have forgot to do parking. Those expenses are not allowed because that is not part of your business. Anything wholly occurred for your part of the business will be allowed. And there is one restriction apart from that. In fact, two restrictions apart from that. One is entertainment, which is 50%. Is very similar to the corporates, 50%. And the second is on the interest limit. So it is restricted 30% of the EBITDA over and above 12 million dirhams. So that is the definition of deductible and non-deductible. Definitely, anything that is donations or anything that is apart from this, bribes, all of this is not allowed as deduction. Apart from that, yeah, very interesting questions. Dividend received from Australia since natural person resident in UAE, whether it is tax applicable for tax. So, as I said, here participation exemption will have to be checked. There are a lot of other criteria that will have to be checked, and then it will be allowed or disallowed. See, the condition for exemption for income remains same whether it is natural person or corporate. So the only thing that has to be checked is whether this dividends or your holdings is more than that 5% criteria or not. Otherwise, it may get taxed. Okay, perfectly. I think I've covered almost all the questions regarding the individuals that were there in this chat box. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Feel free to reach out to us if you need any assistance. Definitely, we'll be sharing these presentations for everyone for the records. And if there is any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Uh, there are few questions regarding the company that I can quickly touch upon. See, financial year for companies can be anything. That is definitely an option that you have. If you're following Jan to December, you can take Jan to December. If you're following April to March, you can take that. If you're following, someone asked about August, then you're already in that corporate tax period because corporate tax was applicable from 1st June 2023. So then August, it has already started from 1st August to July. So but when it comes to natural person, they have specified and said that you have to follow the Gregorian calendar year, which is Jan to December. And for all the natural persons doing business, the calendar year that has to be followed is Jan to December. And that 9 months after that, your first return will be filed. However, you have to apply for the corporate tax registrations for which there is absolutely no deadline that has been announced, but definitely now that you know that your business income may get taxed, it is always better to decide when to get the corporate tax registration. I think perfect. So this is all from our side. We'll keep the chat box open for a couple of minutes before saying thank you to everyone. But getting this chat box occupied or probably listening to a lot of questions that you have, I feel happy that people are concerned, people are taking a right step. And I would say that instead of trying to do any financial engineering, try to get yourself compliant. And for that, you need to just start following your basic steps. Say if you have 2 million dirhams of turnover, the best way to get compliant is open a company, set up a company, you get a small business relief. You have businesses worth over a million, but over 3 million, then it is always suggested to have a corporate tax registration or license done, so that it gives you benefits at least on few angles that is available. Should all businesses of the sole proprietor need to be consolidated? That's a choice. Absolutely, that's a choice that you want to consolidate or not. But definitely, if you have multiple businesses, one return for that individual will go. Or if there are separate licenses, then you can form a tax group and then take it ahead. But if it is an individual running multiple businesses, it will be a consolidated return. If the turnover is less than 375, do we need to register for tax? Unfortunately, everyone has to register for tax. So turnover has nothing to do with your registration. For natural person, I think Karishma will be able to answer this. What is there is a benefit for natural person to get registration and opt out for registration. But but unfortunately, turnover has nothing to do with that. And 375 is probably a profitable turnover profits. Turnover criteria is either million dirhams or 3 million dirhams, right? It is so there are a lot of confusion when it comes to turnover versus profitability. Turnover limits are defined. So for a natural person, tax will be applicable only and only after 1 million of turnover. So for example, if your income is 900,000 and your entire income is your profit, there is still no tax. So the 375 will only kick in after you cross the million dirhams of turnover. Similarly, when you go to corporate, it will only kick in after 3 millions. So if you have a 2.5 million dirham business and you are earning 2 million as a profit, there is no tax at all. But registration, unfortunately, you will still have to do it. And I hope that makes a lot of sense. So there is no turnover limit as such when it comes to natural person or for registration of tax, but definitely there is a tax limit of 9% till 375,000 dirhams of profit. Over 1 million of turnover, it is 0%, and over that it is 9%. So I hope we have tried to clarify most of the doubts that were there. However, if you still have questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have and guide you in the best way possible. Over to you, Karishma, for any last comments.
I think the most of the questions where the people were having with respect to the company, I've tried to cover. If anything is missed out, we'll definitely drop an email while replying for all the questions that you have asked. And hopefully we'll be coming with more such interesting webinars with really very specific topics to guide you and help you more understanding on this corporate tax front. And hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you so much. And do reach out to us for any queries that you have with respect to corporate tax, and we will be happy to help and assist you on that front. Thank you. Thank you once again,
Thank you.
everyone.
Have a great evening, everyone.